Julie, 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 do you love me?
Of course I do. I miss you, Steve.
I can't remember the last time we actually saw each other.
I was thinking last night, it's got to be 30 years, literally.
Wow.
Right?
I know I saw you at, I think it was this one of the conventions. I have that photo of you and Marianne
Oh,
and
yeah, that was,
Eileen.
I think I was still in LA at that time.
Yeah, because I was working on the reason I know I was on the East Coast is I had that King Diamond sweatshirt on, and I didn't get that until like I
I
was
hope
going.
you still have it, Steve.
I don't think I do. I think one thing about ex-girlfriends is they know how to steal all your cool rock shit, all your
Yeah,
t-shirts and everything. I
I
can't
know.
find anything; they're all gone.
You know what? I still have an Amiga Enigma t-shirt. I still have one. But I used to have a Pink Dust t-shirt, and I don't know where it went. And
Those
it
were
was
rad.
damn cool. It was really cool.
I never
But
used the word rad, but those
no,
shirts,
those
Steve
those were
Steve
Rad was
Pross.
made for that label.
Yeah, Steve Pross came up with that. He was that whole pink dust concept was fantastic. That's one of the best things that happened. Oh, for you people out there listening, Julie and I work together, so it's going to be hard to not talk about Enigma while we're here, since we
Yeah,
were in the Restless Records office together for,
yeah.
I don't
We
know, at
were in the
least a
garage,
year. At least a year, right?
maybe two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like there was Enigma, which was like in the like actual offices, and then there was us, and we were basically on the loading dock. That was
You came in Segundo. You weren't
Elf.
in Torrance.
No, Elsa. I
Right.
was the lovely downtown El Segundo. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, but I want to go way back first, okay? I always thought that you grew up in Manhattan, but then when I read this little bio that you sent me, it said you used to go into Manhattan for shows. Where did you grow up? Long
I
Island?
grew up in Massapequa.
Long Island.
As Jerry Seinfeld once very aptly said, that's Indian for by the mall. And they just closed that mall, as a matter of fact, too. That the mall days are done in Massapequa. That's where I grew.
The Baldwin town,
The
Massapequa.
Baldwins, Amy Fisher, and actually the Stray Cats, which had a very big influence on me as a teenager because they were my age and a little bit older than me. So we and Brian Setzer was in a band called the Bloodless Pharaohs before the Stray Cats, and they used to play all these crappy little bars on Long Island that were like old men's bars. And I don't know how they talked their way into the gigs, but they did, and it was like Brian in drag and like three other Massapequa guys and like a bunch of like postal workers and like me and my friends all dressed up like we thought we were Betty Boop, on crack or something. And yeah, we used to go to like all these really bizarre old man's bars and saw them, but then they started playing in the city. And so then we started following them out to the city, and then that was that. It's
Okay,
all sure.
you wouldn't know this, but when I left Roadrunner and went and started Giant Records at Dutch East India in Rockville Center, I lived in Manhattan, which we're going to talk about because you got me the apartment in Manhattan. We'll get to that too. We got so many connections here.
I know it's
But
weird.
I lived in Seaford, which is right near the Wantagh
Right
train
next to
station.
Massapequa, yeah.
Yeah. Now you didn't go to school at any of the Baldwins, did you?
I did actually. Danny Baldwin was my age, and the Baldwin brothers went to there were two high schools in Massapequa. They went to the other high school. However, their father, whose name
Principal.
was Alec Senior, Alec Baldwin Senior, was my social studies teacher,
Oh man.
and he was actually a really great teacher, and he was also like the rifle coach. You know what I mean? Like,
A rifle
yeah,
coach.
like something ridiculous like that. We had a shooting range. But he was a coach, and he liked me. He was a nice guy, but he always gave me crap. And I actually ran into Alec once, and I said, "Listen, you don't know me. I know your brother Dan." He's like, "Oh yeah." I said, "Your father," I said, "gave me endless crap." in high school. He goes, "Oh, he did that to all of us." So yeah, he was my social studies teacher, and he was like, "Kreisman, are you awake? Kreisman, what did you smoke for breakfast?" Like he would always give me hell, but he was a good teacher.
Well, years after I worked at Giant, I was with my boss at Third Stone, Dick Rudolph, and he asked me if I'd go to lunch with him and Billy Baldwin. So I met Billy, and Billy was in the choir with a guy I worked with at Dutch East India, Steve Mandracina. So I mentioned Beefcake is what I used to call him. I mentioned Steve to him, and he got all excited. Wow, Steve? What happened to him? And I'm thinking, this is hilarious. Billy Baldwin, with this, they were in a choir together, and I thought that they went to the school their father was at, but maybe I got that part of it wrong.
No, actually, that I think that was on purpose. They went to Berner High School, which was the high school down the road. And I was friends with Danny for a while. He had a boat, which made him extremely attractive. And we used to we used to go on the boat because Massapequa was all canals. It's all
Yeah, yeah,
canals
yeah.
everywhere. And so we used to walk, around the block, and then Danny would pick us up on his boat, like behind the deli, where and we would tool around, and we'd go to the beach and whatever. Massapequa's big beach, big. Don't
Jones Beach is near there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had our own town beach called Tobay Beach, and there's a little beach around the corner from where I live too. So it was very, very beachy. And so me and a couple of my friends used to, get on his boat, and but we always had to babysit Billy. Like that was like the bad part about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm stuck with Billy again today. Okay. But yeah,
They
so
were
no,
they
I,
were
I
pretty
was
cool. When
friends
you
with
say
Danny.
Danny Daniel, right? Is his
Yeah,
real?
Daniel. We
Yeah,
call him
because he had an
Daniel.
acting career too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's had like seven wives and but yeah, he actually looks the most like his father, tell you the truth, because he's a big guy. But I don't even know how the hell I met him, but we used to cut out of Massapequa and then go get Danny at his high school. It's like, wait a minute, I'm cutting out of one high school to go to another high school. Like, doesn't even make any sense at all. But yeah, there's a lot of I don't know what's in the water in Massapequa, but
Yeah, Long Island is a strange place, man. I'll tell you. I only spent 1 year living out there, and that was enough for me. So, did you
yeah.
take the Long Island Railroad into town a lot to go to shows and stuff? How did that
Sometimes
start?
sometimes I took the railroad. We would, get a ride with um whomever, like the older people like Brian and stuff were already driving. Actually one time me and my friend Wendy, who I haven't spoken to in a long time, but anyway, me and my friend Wendy we were dying to see, I think it was the Bloodless Pharaohs, at is it CB's or Max's? CB's, I think. No, it was Max's, definitely Max's. And we somehow talked our mothers into going with us. This was like 1978. Because we didn't have a ride and we didn't want to take the train and we were being lazy. We're like, come on, let's go. And oh my God, my mother drove us in this Cadillac. We had a Cadillac. It was like the size of a hotel room. It was huge. It had like eight lighters in it. We called it the marshmallow because it was white leather interior inside. You could sleep like six in that thing, right? And we did. And so it's just my mother just and my friend Wendy's mother drove us there, and they had a great time. And my mother was classic Brenda, she's like, well, I saw a lot of blacks with whites. I'm like, okay, Mom, there we go. There's Brenda, But yeah, I don't know
I
how
know
we
you
got
grew up in a
into it,
very
but
Jewish family. Were all
oh
your
yeah.
friends Jewish around you?
Um, Jewish or Italian,
Yeah.
we called it matzah pizza.
What's the
Right.
difference, right? Jewish,
Yeah,
Italian, right?
yeah. But yeah, most of my girlfriends were Jewish, I guess.
So, did you see a lot of good shows when you used to go into town around that time?
I did. I mean, I look back now and I'm like, geez, I was really like lucky.
Yeah.
I saw the Ramones a bazillion times. I probably saw the Ramones. The only band I ever saw more than the Ramones was probably the Dogmatics.
We're going to talk about them too.
Yeah. Um, but I saw the Ramones everywhere. I saw them on Long Island. I saw them actually the first time I saw them, they opened up for Blue Oyster Cult.
Wow.
They opened up for Blue Oyster Cult at the Nassau Coliseum, which doesn't even exist anymore. And they and everyone was like, concerts back then,
Yeah.
they were drunk and stoned and smoking and whatever. And my friends were like, let's go to the bathroom, listen. And then the Ramones just started. Nobody was in their seat yet, like, not a lot. And I was like, you know what? I want to check these guys out. And I was like, just my jaw hit the floor. People were throwing shit at them, like literally, like like trying to get the chairs up off the floor and throw shit at them. The set was probably like 7 minutes long, but oh my God, I went out the next day. I bought Rocket to Russia, and that was it. The end,
That's a great story. You went for Godzilla, you ended up with lobotomy.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't even know why I was going to see Blue Oyster Cult.
Well, they were a Long Island band, right? Blue Oyster Cult.
I don't even know.
I think they're new. I
It
think they're
might
a
have
Long
been.
Island band. I'm
I
not
wasn't even
positive.
that big of a fan, but back then there weren't concerts like now, like every 5 seconds. A band came to the Coliseum if you got tickets for 12.50, you know, not
So did you
one.
get did you veer into all kinds of punk rock at that time, or was it just the
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Ramones?
I loved the Ramones. I liked all that the New York stuff. So then I saw Johnny Thunders a lot. Um, back at also uh Max's CB's. I would go all the time. I didn't even know who I was going to see. It was just whoever like was there on a Saturday night. That's who I ended up seeing. Um, but there were a lot of bands that were just around then, like James White and the
Oh
Blacks.
yeah, cool band.
Um, and oh, Wayne slash Jane County, who I always got a kick of. I actually have a pink vinyl 12-inch of a Jane County, which
Ooh,
yeah, I know. That's nice.
that sounds like a good part of the
Yeah.
collection.
Yeah, that I think that and a couple of my gangrene things are probably worth more than anything. And if you would have asked me 30 years ago if my gangrene singles would be worth anything, I would have laughed, been like hysterical. And
Well,
my
believe me,
son,
I'm upset because I went through this rough period. I can't remember when it was, and I sold a lot of hardcore records. What
oh
an
yeah,
idiot I was
they're the
because
only ones worth money. I don't know. I guess maybe because those guys didn't drink, so they're all still alive, so they're all still trading and buying them. I
you
don't
know
know.
you know who just passed away this weekend, right?
Al,
Yeah, Al Barile. Um,
yeah,
I
that's
didn't
really
sell all
sad.
my records though. I have
Oh.
like thousands. I got a lot of records, but I did sell some of the ones that I wish I didn't sell.
I sold mostly everything except colored vinyl. So I have a lot of great Flaming Lips colored vinyl um,
Wow, yeah.
that we put out
Yeah.
on Restless. Um, and I saw them recently. They were really great. I was expecting nothing, and Wayne is Wayne's really like a genius
I
in his
remember first
own
meeting them
way.
when I was, at Enigma, and I was like, they're from Oklahoma City, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
Norman, right?
I was trying. They were a Pink Dot, Steve
Yeah, they were a
Frost.
Pink
Yeah,
Dust band.
Steve Frost brought them in, and I was like, they were cool, but I didn't really think that they could ever be like have a Pink Floyd kind of crowd. That's what ended up happening.
They sell out wherever they play. They have this really cool, crazy fan base. It's kind of like the Dead Milkmen too. I mean, totally different music, but they've all bought houses somehow and had a career.
It's going to be hard to stay on point with you because every time one of these bands, because you say the Dead Milkmen, and I remember the day they showed up at the office and everyone, they were out in the lobby and no one, Wes, of course, was like, I'm not hanging out with them. So I went and hung out with them. And I remember we shipped 1,200 copies of their record and everyone thought it was going to be a bomb. And then fucking bitching Camaro just went,
Well, and then they put out
poof.
Bucky Fellini with Punk Rock Girl.
Yeah.
That was on heavy rotation on
Yeah.
MTV.
Yeah, they
Um,
they blew up. But that first record though went from nothing to like 50,000 and
but yeah,
like
what's a big lizard in my backyard,
yeah,
right?
it just blew
Yeah.
up. I remember that because I was dealing with all the distribution and it was like, what the fuck? And of course then everyone was like, hey, yeah, let's
Oh
get
yeah, the Dead
behind them.
Milkmen, they're on our label. But
I
yeah,
got an interesting email from Wes. He'll probably end up listening to this, so I'll be nice, Wes. I got an email from him recently thanking me for everything that I did when I worked at Enigma, and I was like,
nice. That's
it
so
was
nice.
really nice, but it's funny. Why did it take so many years for to get this mess? But
Yeah.
we ended up going back and forth, and I thought I told him, I said I was a jerk back then, and he was like, we all were jerks back then. I was like, all
I
right.
remember him being a jerk. I remember him being very earnest.
Yeah, he wasn't a jerk at all. He was just he was like a bean counter. He was
Yeah.
like the bean counter.
Yeah, he was the
Bill
bean
was
counter, and Bill was
yeah.
I don't even know what.
Bill was the genius.
Yeah.
But listen, you don't get to where they got to and not have brains and be smart and know what you're doing because they started with Green World and they just blew it all up
Yep.
and ended up selling, the big bands to Capitol and they did well for
They really
themselves.
did do
I don't
well for
have anything
themselves.
bad to say about the Heinz. We
I
just,
had a lot of fun there.
yeah.
Come on. What was
Yeah.
1986? And you were in LA.
We got to go back though, because here I go, getting ahead of myself
All
here, because I
right, well,
want to
go
get to
back, go
that.
back.
But I'm
I'll
not
follow
going to
your
just
lead.
forget about what you did in Boston because you moved to Boston and you went, I believe, it all started with ERS, right?
I
Tell
went
the
to
story about
Emerson.
what made you go to Emerson and how you got into music up there,
Right.
because you ended up being a pivotal player in the Boston scene.
I'm sorry, there's like one hair that just won't leave my mouth. Um, I went to Emerson because my grades sucked and because they did not have a football team. And that was my one that was my
You
one
crack me
like
up.
thing. I did
No
not want
football team?
no football team. As a matter of fact, the Emerson has t-shirts, which that there's a guy on what's it called? Always Sunny in Philadelphia, who's an Emerson student. And he wears this t-shirt. I have one, and it says Emerson College football undefeated since 1858 or whatever. And it's like, yeah, because we don't have a football team. And it just wasn't one of those schools. It wasn't a rah-rah school. The campus was Boston, and they had this radio station. And at the time, I thought I wanted to be a DJ, which people actually were those days. Now I don't know. Do kids grow up and want to be DJs? I don't think so. So, well, maybe in a club. Okay. But anyway, that's what I wanted to do. And I went there and, I immediately what tried to get on air and I wanted to be on the nightclub and I did not get a shift the first year. I think what's his name? He was on MTV. I can't remember his name now. He was an early MTV guy who was at Emerson, the program director, Herzog, Doug Herzog. Does that
Him,
sound
I
familiar?
don't know, but I
Yeah,
believe you because there's a
yeah,
lot of people there
yeah.
that we could talk about those other people. But go ahead.
Yeah, Doug Herzog. Anyway, he didn't give me the shift. And I was like, okay, well, screw it. No one's doing an overnight shift. I'm going to do an overnight shift. They're like, yeah, take it. No one wants that crap. I'm like, fine. So I did I guess it was Saturday night, from don't know, midnight to 6 or whatever it was. And then I was followed by that folk show, which had a ton of listeners, a ton of listeners. I cannot remember the name of the show on ERS. It was probably their most listened to show, and it was on Sunday morning. And I played Smegma and the Nuns, Beat Her with the Rake, and some like crazy folk person heard it at like 6. It was my outro song, and heard it at like 6 in the morning, and like wrote a letter to like the head of the president of Emerson College, the board of directors, this, and this. And they're like, beat her with the rake is not what we should be hearing at 6 in the morning. I'm like, oh God. So I got tossed off the air for
You
a little
did?
bit. Yeah, for a little bit. And then the next, I'm proud. I'm
You
proud of
should be. That's pretty cool. I'm
playing,
sure the Stilfen brothers appreciate it.
right? I'm kind of in a fight with one of the Stilfen brothers, but oh well, that's
I
another
bet you the
story.
one on the West Coast is the one you're in a fight with.
Yeah. What happened to Glenn? What happened to Glenn?
Glenn's still around. I just saw him this past summer. Dean Jackson, and we could talk about people that passed away on
Right.
for the whole
I
show. But Dean
right,
passed away, and there were a bunch of bands played at
right,
Sonia, which used to be TT's, and I was hanging out with
right.
Glenn for a little while. Glenn's a good guy.
He's a
I mean,
nice guy.
you
He's
know,
nice.
you remember when the outlets were on Enigma, and they shared Walter, and all both of those bands stayed at
Everyone shared Walter.
they all stayed at my house, and both the Stilfen brothers slept there like for a week.
Uh-huh.
So I got to know, but he was only like 16 at the time, you know?
He was a baby. I know he was younger than me.
Yeah.
Um,
So I hijacked it again. I'm going to keep doing this. So what I'm curious about is before you talk about how you got into the management thing, there was a lot of people that we know that started at ERS. Who are some of the people that you were with there? Was
well,
Debbie Southwood
Debbie,
Smith with you?
Debbie was there. Um, the following year, I auditioned for nightclub again. This time it was Curtis, and he did not.
Curtis, another
Curtis
one.
did not give me a shift either, the motherfucker. And well, I don't care, but so I did the overnight again. Then Debbie, I think, became the head of the nightclub. She didn't give me one either. She's my best friend too. Like one of my best friends in the world. I still see her and talk to her all the time.
I love that because I worked with both of you guys at different times. It's so cool that you're good. I knew you were good friends, but keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, she's still a good friend. So Curtis, Debbie, Shred, um,
Mike Jones, was he there?
Mike Jones. Oh,
Yeah.
God, I forgot about him.
Well, he was the metal guy. That's why I
He's a
remember
metal
that
guy.
because there wasn't a big metal town we were
No.
in. You know, I was in Framingham State at that
Oh,
time.
okay.
But I used to listen to 91.3. We were 91.3 until you got past Natick and then it was ERS. It was like, oh,
That's
well, they got
funny.
the whole fucking, you
Yeah, it was
know.
a pretty for a college station. It was a pretty strong. It was a pretty decent range.
Yeah,
Um,
ERS isn't what it was now because MBR is like MBR and MFO are the two really
too. Yeah,
cool college stations. But back then, ERS was like they were
yeah.
right up there, you know?
Well, it was interesting. They were kind of hijacked in the 70s, ERS, if I'm not mistaken, by uh like the I won't say Black Lives Matter because it didn't exist then, but a black
You mean
uh,
after not the 70s, you mean what, the 90s?
no, no. In the 70s, like the big thing when we were there, right, which was when I got into
Early
college in
80s.
1980.
Yeah.
1980 was my freshman year in college. Um, their show, The Black Experience, which I don't know what it's called anymore, but that was um put on the programming schedule because a list of demands from African American students who took over at some point in the late 60s, early 70s, took over the student union and demanded that they get a radio show, which I think is very interesting. So that was a very popular time slot with the I can't they changed the name of the show during the time I was there. But anyway,
It was only 40 years ago and you can't remember?
yeah, sorry. I couldn't remember anything back then either. I have the
Yeah,
shittiest memory.
you didn't remember I lived in your father's building. Well, that was
I
pretty
know.
fun.
I can't believe I didn't remember. That building's got more history than
Oh,
none. Should write a book about it.
we're gonna talk about that too. So,
But anyway, so I went to Emerson. I never, I never got I don't think I ever got a nightclub shift. Maybe my last year, I don't know. But I did the overnight, and the overnight was great because I had complete freedom. No one gave a crap what I was doing. I think Peter Choice was the Friday night overnight, and
so many famous people, you know what I mean?
he was a nut job, but wow, so talented, so talented. I don't know what really happened to him.
ERS, man, that's a really great thing to have on your resume right there, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
it was fun, and that people came and visited me all the time because the clubs would let out at 2 or whatever, and then everyone, if they couldn't find the after party, they ended up, coming to the studio, which was right on Beacon Street, and you could open the window and hear the traffic through the microphone. The building hadn't been rehabbed yet. It was kind of a mess, but it was great, and everyone showed up. Bands. I think Dogmatics would show up. That's probably how I first met them. I don't even
Yeah, I
know.
was going to ask you, how did you end, when did you end up going to shows and where were you going? Were you going to the Rat a lot? I mean, where were you going?
I went to shows like every night of the week,
I
pretty
believe
much.
it.
Like two or three. Like sometimes we'd go to the Rat, see a band, go across the street to can't
S-
remember the name of the
Storyville.
Storyville, thank you. Go to Storyville, see a band, go back to the Rat, get in somebody's car, go to Cambridge, go to Inman Square, see something, there was so many bands playing, and I was
Did
um
you go to the In Square Men's Bar?
oh yeah.
I didn't make it there. I was
Yeah,
before,
I saw a few bands there.
wow, because
Um,
it's the S&S Deli now.
that's right. That's right. And yeah, so I saw a ton of bands. And then when I started working with the Dogmatics, like, oh, you know what else I also did, which I just remembered? I was a DJ at Jumpin' Jack Flash,
Oh, wow.
which was hysterical because the DJ booth was right on side of the dance floor, but it was up, like it was like in a loft, and you had to walk on these external wooden stairs, like rickety wooden
I
stairs,
remember that.
to go up, and it was probably like at least 10 or 12 stairs. I don't think I'm exaggerating. And then you had to like kind of swing yourself over into this little tiny hut, which was like overhung the dance floor in order to spin records. So you had to like, if you wanted to get down from there and use a bathroom and get a beer or whatever, you have to like run down the stairs, run back up the stairs. And I'm not the most coordinated thing in the world, so like I almost killed myself like 20 times. But that was really, I lived right across the street. So that was a fun place to work because I could just, walk over and, whatever, play some music and then go home. And I got paid a little bit for it, I guess. Uh,
Were the Dogmatics the first band that you met that you decided you wanted to work with?
yeah, when I went to school, I never thought about managing a band. But, Boston had this kind of very cool history, not history, but when I got there, Lily was managing bands, Julie Farman was managing the needs and working at
Joyce,
yeah, Joyce,
Joyce
um,
Linehan.
yeah, Joyce Linehan, Randy Millman, myself.
Wow,
So
just think about how many great women that got in the music business you just named right in a row. Every one of them did something important.
yeah,
It's
Debbie
incredible,
too.
including
Debbie
you.
managed a band. Thank you.
Debbie
Yeah, it was
Southwood
really,
Smith managed the band
yeah,
too. Who
she
did
managed Chain Link Fence with
she did?
Billy
Billy
Barrett.
Barrett. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So it. I
You
don't
got the
know. So,
coolest one though.
oh, thank you.
Talk about that.
Say that to all the
How
girls.
did you meet them and did you hang out I'm sure you hung out on Thayer Street. I'd love
Oh,
to hear some
please.
of that, some about that.
Um, I guess I met them at ERS. I mean, I can't imagine where else I would have met them. They probably did a Metro Wave with Carmelita, or
Carmelita, there's another one. My
another
God.
one, Carmelita. And yeah, so I must have met them there, and then I saw them a few times, and I just thought they were just a great, fun house band. Like I said on their documentary, like they were Boston's house band. Like you could throw them in a metal gig, people would love them. You could throw them at a hardcore gig, people would love them. You throw them in a rockabilly gig, people would love them. They just there's nothing to dislike. You know what I mean? Like you can't hate the Dogmatics.
It's truly remarkable about what you just said still stands today.
Hmm.
Because they could do that today. I've seen them with different bands since they reformed. It's like they have not missed a beat.
No,
It's
and they're better, and
incredible.
they actually know how to play their instruments. So it's or tune them, or I don't know, whatever. But well, Tommy,
Was it a friendship thing with you and them? Is that how it got going?
yeah, I think so. I mean, um I think Jerry, who I'm still very good friends with, like I know any of those guys if I called them up, and said I need you in New York tomorrow, they would be here. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean?
it's
Like,
awesome.
they all, like Tommy Long's like the funniest, driest, most droll human being in the world. I've had some of the most incredible conversations of my life with Tommy. Jerry's just a good pal. He's a good, fun friend. He likes to play, he likes to play the chowder head, but he ain't no chowder head.
Great songwriter, I'll say that about him.
Yeah, and Pete is just salt of the earth. I mean, all the O'Hallorans are salt of the earth.
You
And
know, when you go see the band now, you can see as many as three O'Hallorans on stage at once. It's pretty impressive.
it's like you never know which O'Halloran is going to show up, and yeah, and they're all really good, and
So did you like really get into the business aspect of it right away? And did you
I
have
tried. I tried. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
did
Did
you
any of
have
us?
anything to do with Homestead?
No. That
No.
was a deal that was signed before I got there
Okay.
through Sam Berg.
Burger, Sam Burger.
Yeah.
So they got signed to Homestead and then you became their manager?
Yeah, I think they felt like, okay, we've got a deal now, but none of us want to get off our ass and really do anything.
Did you book
Uh,
all the shows too?
oh yeah. Well, yeah, up until we did get a booking agent at one point. Oh boy, did I beg them to take us on.
That is
And
the worst job, isn't it? Booking bands and
but I did
clubs.
book I did book them. Thing is that Jerry and all those guys, they all had their own little connections. I mean, I mean, to be honest, did they really need me? Probably not. But they wanted to say that they had a manager and that she was Jewish. No,
I'm
I
glad
think
you said that.
no, but he does. Jerry says that all the time. Julie was our manager. We picked her because she's a Jew. I'm like, yeah, okay. But I think, they wanted to have somebody that would do all the stuff they didn't want to do. But a lot of times Jerry booked his own shows, or Pete would know some guy who knew some guy. So, but I did book a lot of shows, and then we did have, and I cannot remember the name of the booking agent, but they booked a lot of bands
Well,
out
they
of,
ended up going on tour, so they must have got a
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's really hard to do. I booked a national tour once for a band, and that is just not fun.
I booked the on Oysters tour once, and they afterwards they hated me. They're like, that sucked. I'm like, oh well, I
Okay,
tried,
okay, so I know about the FUs, and that you worked with them. Were there other bands too?
The Bags I worked with for a short period, who, I'll tell you, I don't have a lot of regrets, Steve. I really don't. I don't really regret anything because I'm happy where I am. I hope you feel the same way. But
Well,
little things. They're little things, but big things. Um,
no.
but I I regret not having worked with the bags more because, I at the time I needed money. I had to get money. My father had gone bankrupt, the well was dry there. And I needed money. And I'm like, listen, I can't manage you guys anymore. I need to start managing like cover bands so I can actually make money. You know what
So
I mean?
was it, what's the order here in terms of the Dogmatics, then the FUs, then the bags?
I think so, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to sign the bags when I moved to New York, and I had a bidding war with my own old label, you.
Right, right.
And I got the hoods and you got the bags. I
That's
remember
right.
that. So it kind of worked out for you.
It
You ended up
did.
working with them.
Yeah, I did. Again, I don't think they were too happy with me when I was like, listen, dudes, I need to manage cover bands. And they're like, what? What's wrong with you? But, that's where I was at the time. But, I go back and I listen to, what was the name of the record?
Rock
Rockstar.
Starve.
I go back and I listen to Rockstar and I'm like,
It's good.
it's a freaking great
Yeah.
record. And I listened to it, and first of all, I don't know if I realized it at the time, but there's so much Kiss in that record, like
Yeah. Yeah.
a
Chris
ton of it, but good.
Crispin. Crispin's got that Kiss vibe going on with
Yeah,
his
he does.
rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the vocals too. There's some Gene Simmons vocals there. So anyway, I'm sorry I didn't get to do more with them, but at the time, then I was already working at Enigma,
You
and
know what's crazy,
doing
Julie?
that.
Is last year I saw the Dogmatics, I saw the FUs, and I saw the bags last year.
The Bags played. Oh, I would have
Oh,
loved
they
to
did two
see them.
shows that were huge.
Oh my
Yeah, in
God, how'd
town.
they sound? I bet you they were
They were
great.
great.
Yeah,
They were great. They were on my show recently. Well, not Jim. It was Crispin
yeah.
and
Is
John.
did Jim play with them?
Yeah, the original band, they played two shows. They said they're in the studio now with Minahan making another record, so I
That's
think they'll be
great.
playing again. Jim has constantly been in bands, I mean, the whole time, he's probably him and Walter, I think, are the two best drummers ever to come out of this scene, the Boston scene. They're both
Jim
phenomenal.
is in the upper crust, isn't
Yeah,
he?
they haven't played in a few years, but he also was in Justine and the Unclean, but Justine Koval passed away
That's
a
right.
couple of years ago. But
Yeah.
let's go back for a second. The FUs, because we have a real
I don't know
connection with
how the
them.
fuck that happened.
Yeah, we have a connection with them too because of the label and but you were okay, you know what? I'm not going to ask a million questions about them. I'm just going to ask one because you can't get a straight answer on this. Did you have an argument with them about changing the name? Because I remember I was really upset when they changed their name to the Straw Dogs. Where did you stand on that?
I did I don't know that I ever argued with them about it because I think it was a done deal by the time I stepped in. Like I think like the
So Steve
first
Martin was already in the band when you started working with
correct.
them. Okay, got it.
Correct. So I think like the first gig that I went to see them when I first started managing them was their first gig as the Straw Dogs.
Wow,
You know what I
really?
mean? I'm almost positive. Oh my God. Steve dragged me to see Ronnie James Dio at the Garden once. I don't know why I just remembered that,
You
but
must be, yes, Steve's from Long Island too, so you guys have that connection, right?
yeah, he dated my sister for a while too, which was weird. But anyway.
I mean, he was on my show and he's Paul this and Paul that, and I'm like fucking talking about Paul McCartney. The guy's Paul McCartney's
Yeah,
publicist.
Steve's really has made quite a career for himself. And
And I remembered him when he worked at the Long Island Ear as a writer, and I was
yep,
pitching him stories on Dag Nasty and verbal assault, and
Ed
now he's got
Nasty.
Foo Fighters, McCartney, Arcade Fire, insane.
Yeah, and it honestly, it doesn't surprise me at all.
He's a very intelligent guy.
Yeah. And he's a strong and pushy motherfucker. It doesn't surprise me at all. I always enjoyed his company. We had a lot of fun together. And Wayne used to kill me on a regular basis. I loved Wayne Maestri. He came to my house once my apartment, and it was, I want to say it must have been Halloween, had to be Halloween, of course, because he was dressed like Nikki Sixx.
Oh man.
He had a full Nikki Sixx gear on, Wayne. And I'm like, okay, what? He's like, let's go out. I'm Nikki Sixx. I'm like, oh God, this is gonna be a good night. So I really liked Wayne a lot. I haven't spoken to him since I left Boston. I hope he's doing well because he's a really nice guy. And then John, I knew Socks before I knew any of them because Sock's a pretty big Dogmatics fan. So he was always around and just a really smart, nice guy. And I somehow I ended up managing the band. I don't even know what happened. But very soon after I started managing them, I moved to LA and worked for Enigma. I think that was the reason they hired me was because
Well, I was trying to piece it all together, and I know that we were having a lot of conversations long distance at that time. Plus, you were talking to Scott as well. Plus, we had the band. We signed
right,
the band. I mean, we had the FUs, but then they changed the name, and we did the new deal with them for the
right,
Straw Dogs.
right,
And so I don't remember all the details. I know I was definitely in favor of you coming because I love that someone else from the Boston scene was coming out
right.
to work. Um, and so here we are. So it's 1985, was it? Or
80,
86?
I moved to Boston. I moved to LA in 86.
Okay, so you got to town. Is there anything you want to talk about what happened when you first got to town?
Oh, I just really made a bad call. Don't listen, kids. Any of you out there, next when you get your first real job and your boss picks you up at the airport, don't go and drink 10 margaritas and then go back to his house with them, go to his
Wow,
apartment with them. Bad move, kids. Bad move.
man.
And then I
Okay,
had
the,
to,
the the only thing I can think of is every argument that ever happened in that office. Weren't you on his side all the time against me?
was I? I don't know. Um,
Oh, you don't
maybe.
remember that, Julie?
No, I don't.
No, I
Um,
mean it was we had a lot of shit to deal with at Restless. We
yeah,
we were putting out 8 records a month, and when you
did a lot.
think about that now. We were putting out 8 records a month, every month, sometimes more. Some were Metal Blade, some were like Fever because we had
Oh, I forgot about
we had
Fever.
Dead Milkmen effigies, and
Right.
what was that band with the girl? Get Smart. Remember them?
Mm. That
And
was a Fever record too. That was a Fever
yeah,
band too.
you got there after we had already put out the outlets and the Lazy
Yes.
Cowgirls, and we had the label going. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, we just got really busy. Like,
Yeah, well, you took on all the metal, we took on all the Metal Blade catalog, which, was hell in and of itself. And I wasn't into any of that music really. And you were, which is probably why we fought over a bunch of shit.
I
Um,
don't remember fighting with you a lot,
I
though.
don't either, but yeah, but if I took Scott's side, it certainly wasn't because of my bad judgment. It was because I
Well,
really thought it was.
I think I was really cranky, though, at the end of my experience there because I was pissed off at the owners of the company. And then when I got offered the job, you said earlier in the conversation you have no regrets. I do have some regrets, and that's one of them. I should have stuck it out and stayed there, but instead I went to New York. And it
Yeah,
was
but if
like,
you stayed there, I'm sorry, we've got a new cat and she's all over the place. Um,
mine's right there. Can you see him?
oh, hey,
Damn, he's sleeping on the bed.
we're fostering cats. Me and my partner just started fostering cats. So we
That's
got
awesome.
we got a new cat yesterday. But anyway, yeah, I mean I left because I wanted to get back to New York and I had the opportunity to open up Enigma's New York
I
office.
didn't know about any of that. I don't know. I must have been in my own world in New York when that happened because I don't remember any of that. But
When
before,
did you leave? When
well,
did
here's the thing. that you didn't remember is that I got a job at Roadrunner and I had no idea where I was going to live, and you got me in an apartment, but you didn't
Right.
remember that
I did
because
not remember it. Yeah.
29 East 10th Street. And it blew my mind when someone posted a thing on
Yeah,
Instagram recently and said the
me too.
Dogmatics stayed in that building. And then you tell me it's the same apartment. And I was
A
like,
lot of people stayed in that building, Steve. A lot. Let's see. Who can I say? Steve? I know Walter stayed in that apartment. We had Walter was there. Maybe some of the other outlets were there. I don't remember. Dogmatics
I
definitely.
didn't get there till November 86 is when I moved there.
This was
November
after.
86.
This was definitely after you left the city. Um, and then
You sure that wasn't before I was there?
no, yeah, you're right. You're
Because the
right. It had to
Dogmatics
be.
were on Homestead around
No,
84,
you're right.
85.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It had to be because I
Yeah.
left, like I said, I left in 86 and
I was
you
only
were,
there for 1 year. I had a lease and I had to move to Long Island. It was another mistake I made. So I do have more regrets than you do. I should have stayed in that apartment. I don't know why I left. Because downtown Beirut was my place, man. I
oh
loved
yeah,
the
yeah.
best bar in New York, and it was right around the corner. You wouldn't believe some of the people I would run into in that bar, man. It
Oh,
was,
everyone was there.
yeah,
I mean, you could find,
Matt
you
Dillon
know,
used to go there,
Matt
Peter
Dillon,
Buck,
yeah, a lot of
Phoebe,
Hollywood
is it Phoebe
people, a lot
Cates?
of band people.
There was an actress that lived upstairs from that. What the fuck was her name? She was ended up on the L Word. I can't remember her name, but she lived there in that building. She was in
Oh, really?
Flashdance, the girl from Flashdance,
Oh,
Jennifer
Beale.
Beals. She lived in that building. And
My father bought that building at the depth of disgustingness of the East Village.
oh yeah, they were all dealers on the street when I was
Oh yeah.
there. But I got to know them. In fact, as a matter of fact, when there was a fight one day out front, this guy decides to start smacking his girlfriend around in front of the building. And of course, I walk out and I decide I'm going to get involved. And I'm trying to tell the guy to knock it off. And the girl punched me in the side of the head. And then the Puerto Rican girls that was selling weed, they
Right.
just came over
They
and got
killed them.
they got on my they were behind me and they
Yeah.
were like there was four girls and me against a couple.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
all
I mean
because they were fighting with each other on the street.
the neighborhood was really, I mean, it's not that different now, really, but I mean, it has been rehabbed a little bit. But the East Village never really totally gentrified, but that that house, all the what are their names? Oh, they're stupid friends, all the alcoholic crew.
Oh, there were
Anyway,
some, there were the ambulance, I never really talked to you about this, but the ambulance was there all the time because there was this couple on the first floor that was ODing like every other week. So, and then I ran into one of them. They worked at the Ritz, and I was like, is there something going on downstairs? And the guy just totally like changed the subject. He didn't want to talk
oh
about it, but
yeah,
I knew there were drugs, and, I never did heroin, but heroin was big in that
big.
neighborhood. This guy shot up in front of me in the fucking bathroom at Beirut one time, and he wouldn't let me leave the bathroom. It was really fucking weird, man.
True.
So
Yeah,
I,
Beirut was, I remember hanging out one night with Johnny Angel at downtown Beirut, who Johnny was my roommate for a while, for a couple years.
wow.
And
How come
um,
you never managed the blackjacks?
I would, first of all, John would never like allow anyone other than himself to manage anything because he's too much of a control
He
freak.
got mad at me one time when I was in town seeing the outlets in the neighborhoods, or one of them, and I was at TT's, and he started giving me a hard time. He thought I was Steve Pross because Steve Pross
Oh,
and him were talking about a deal, and he
right.
was like, I called you, never called me back, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't think
Who are
I've
you?
ever talked to you on the phone before. I'm like, who are you? You're Steve from Enigma, right? I'm like, Steve Riccardo. I mean, you talking about Steve Pro? And it was Steve Pross.
That's funny. Yeah, Johnny. Well, it's funny because I met Johnny early on when I first started going to shows. So he kind of he introduced me to a lot of people. Like he introduced me to like everyone really.
Yeah, he was powerful in the Boston
Yeah.
scene for sure.
And he introduced me to Jack Paley, Jonathan Paley, whatever you want to, who ended up, producing a bunch of, some dogmatic stuff, the Christmas song, which is actually that song gets played, which I didn't know until I spoke to Jerry. He said, yeah, they'd actually around Christmas time, that song actually gets played like across the country. And I'm like, it makes sense because it's a cool song, and Christmas songs usually suck. So,
The bands that the bands you're associated with from that era are all cool bands. You get three really good bands right there that you mentioned, no doubt. And I love seeing all of them still, especially the Dogmatics. To me, they got this young guy in the band a few years ago, and he brought
yeah,
all this life to the band. And when you see him now, it's really unbelievably good.
yep.
They never. I've saw them like 4 or 5 times. I use one of their songs in my intro because I
Oh, you
love those
do?
guys. Yeah, I love rock and roll, which
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. But
yeah.
okay, so I left and then you were there. And what happened after I left? Because I didn't really talk to anyone at Enigma for a while. I
Um,
was mad at everyone there.
well, they wanted to open up a New York office. So, I was like, me, me, me. And then I don't know, did you know Lynn Oakes? Lynn, she was a radio person.
Only by name. She came
Yeah, they
down
hired
after.
her. You must have been gone, but they hired her to come with me and open up the New York office.
Where
She's
was the
actually,
office?
I picked the office and it was on 18th Street between 6th and 7th. I live
Oh,
on I live on 16th Street between 5th and 6th. So I picked something that was walkable. It was a cute little office, it was
did
like
your father have another building in New York? Is that how you got in
my
that
father had a
building?
bunch of buildings in New
Yeah,
York.
so you moved to, boy, you're lucky.
Yeah, but he lost them all. So
Oh,
that's
that's not good.
that's
By
a
the
whole
way,
nother
what was your
story.
sister's name that I had a crush
Amy,
on for a little while? Yeah,
Amy,
I liked her.
Amy
I
Kreishman. Yeah.
never got anywhere, by the way, so don't.
That's okay. Listen, she went out with Dickie. She went out with Dickie and Steve. So with Dickie
Steve,
Barrett and Steve Martin.
she did?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, yeah, I
Huh.
forgot about that until Amy mentioned it
Actually,
recently.
I think I knew that. I think
Yeah.
it's coming back to me now. Yeah, I do. I do remember
Um,
that. I only met her a couple times, but I liked her.
yeah, she's doing good. She's in Jersey. She's in Jersey.
So,
And
so you open up a New York
I
office
opened up the
for
New York office with
Enigma.
Lynn, and
Was it Restless or was it Enigma?
it was
What
an
were you doing?
enigma, but we did everything because if a band came into town, we took care of it. And I was very close with the Dead Milkmen at that point, and they were on Restless. I did some tour dates with
Yeah,
them,
they were
and
in Philadelphia too, so they
they
weren't
were in
very far away
Philly.
from you at that
Yeah.
point.
And then I still talk to Dean Sabatino from the Dead Milkmen. I was very close with Dave Blood, who committed
Yeah,
suicide,
I know.
um, which really freaked me out because me and him, when back when they were touring and I was in Enigma, we talked every day when they were on the road. Like when he went back to the hotel to unwind, he called me. And then when I found out he died, I freaked out. But
Oh,
I
it's the
I don't know what
worst.
happened. I don't know what happened there. But
So you did mention something funny in the note you sent me about Slagle, Brian Slagle from Metal Blade. Did you guys not?
no, I was just being funny because people would come into first of all, I remember Slagle more in LA coming into the office
Yeah.
than in New York. And I remember I found it very funny because people there were like, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. And I was like, this is a little fat fuck. Like, what the
Oh, you
heck?
did not say that. Don't make me have to edit stuff out of this show, please. You're joking.
I am joking. I am joking. He was always a nice guy, but everyone was so in awe of him, and I was like, I hated the music. I'll admit it. I hated the
Well,
music.
the
The
guy
music
did the guy.
boarded and all that shit.
Yeah,
Oh
but the
my God.
guy did discover Slayer and Metallica. I mean, it doesn't get much
Listen,
bigger than that.
his shit still sells, and he's still putting out records. So
Yeah,
power to him. He outlasted Enigma. So
he did.
The power to them. But I was, oh, like we had people that worked there that liked the metal stuff, like Sharon. And she was always like,
Sharon Murley, who doesn't go by
Sharon
Sharon
Merle.
Murley anymore.
Yeah, who doesn't go by Sharon Merle, who gave me hell about smoking back in the days when you could smoke in the office.
Yeah,
Boy,
you didn't know about shit. Well, I don't care. I don't really, I'm like, I don't have any secret. I don't have nothing to hide. But, Sharon and I got involved with each other. And when I worked at Metal Blade, which was years later, it was really funny that you told me you didn't know about that because I
mm-mm.
thought people knew. And it was,
Right before she moved back to LA, which was probably, God, but maybe 10 years ago already. We went out to lunch. She's like, "Oh, come on, let's go out to lunch." Of course, she took me to this vegan place. I'm like, "Sharon, I can't eat anything here."
you didn't go to Katz's Deli?
Yeah, right. She'd like she'd go to Katz's Deli. Give me a break. She's an interesting story though. She's the sweetest, sweetest girl. But like then she has this little voice and she's totally into death metal. She worshipped Slagle. She worshipped the whole Metal Blade thing. That's why I was always making fun of her, and made fun of Brian, who was always very lovely, really. But the real pains in the asses were like the girl who managed the Flaming Lips. Oh my God. It was,
Wasn't she going out with Wayne?
yeah.
Yeah, I
She
can't remember
was,
her name either.
I can't remember
It's
now.
funny you meant the bands you mentioned were the Mentors, the Flaming Lips, and Lizzie Borden.
The Mentor, I remember that Mentor's record. I don't know the name of it. It's got all the girls climbing up the stairs.
I never was a huge fan. Going
Those,
Through Your Purse is the only song I can remember for some. I don't know why. I don't. Did you ever hear what El Duce did at the outlet show at Cathay de Grand? The
no.
outlets came to L. This is before you were there. The outlets came to L.A., did some shows, and they were playing at Cathay de Grand, and it was a really small turnout. And El Duce pulled his pants down and danced around with his dick
Oh
flopping
God.
out in front of the outlets while they were playing. But I give them credit; they just kept playing and they never stopped, and it was just like we all wanted to go over, but El Duce, who's not an approachable,
Is he still alive?
I have no idea.
But yeah, I remember because Sharon got really offended because if you looked really, really, really carefully at the album cover, you could see that one of the girls crawling up the stairs on her way to worship El Duce had no underwear on. So Sharon's like, we can't let this out. We have to sticker these. And then she ran into Bill's office. This is disgusting. Bill's like, we've been sending these out the door for 2 years. What's the
Wow,
difference?
I never heard that story. Wow.
Nobody's complained yet. And I remember her being really upset and she said, I'll buy the stickers and I'll put them on. And and I was just like, Sharon, forget it. And Bill was just like, no. Once someone complains, then we'll think about
I know
it.
she left Enigma and ended up she was working with me at Metal Blade for a little while. That was around I don't know if you were still at Enigma. That was until like
Why did she leave
1989,
Enigma?
90, 1990, I think that was 90, around 90.
Wow.
I can't
Yeah.
get my years straight now.
I Please. The only thing I have that allows me to log time is my son. You know what I mean? Like that's the only like, oh, was Alex alive then? Okay, then I know it was, you know what I mean?
How long did you last with Enigma after that?
I The New York office was 2 years. The interesting thing about the New York office was that the back office was ours and the front office was Mute Records,
Oh yeah,
which was
yeah.
run by Beth Bellis, who who ended up marrying what's his name from Geffen, Mark
Kate?
Cates. Yeah, she ended up
Oh
marrying him.
wow, I didn't realize you had that
Yeah.
connection. Wow.
And hi, Kitty.
It's funny how I knew you were talking about Mark Gates. I do remember
Yeah,
his wife's name's Beth. Yeah.
yeah, Beth.
Yeah.
Um, and and Peter Wright, and they
Peter
had
Wright from Caroline?
uh-huh,
Wow. I
yeah,
remember him.
yeah. The two of them were in the front, so we but they had some weird freaking acts come through, like Diamanda Galas and Leibach, who were like just Nazis basically, and uh Jim Fetus. Um but Nick
So,
Cave, but I did meet Nick Cave a couple times,
oh,
which
that's cool.
was very cool, and he was nice. He kept talking about wanting to adopt a small Vietnamese girl. I was like, okay. But
Wow.
yeah.
I had a
Um,
feeling talking to you would be like no holes barred, you know? I mean, you know.
but
So,
that,
so
yeah,
how long did you last
I'd
there?
say 2 years. And you want to hear how I got fired?
You got fired.
Yeah.
How did you get fired from
I
Enigma? Who
got
fired you?
fired. The person that fired me, I never met before. He was part of this new, like a lot of people left, like Jim Martone left, and
Jim.
like yeah, a lot of those people left and they got these like new kind of corporate people in. And so the guy that came and actually like dropped the axe, I never met him before and I never saw him again. I didn't even know what his name was. But what happened
Was
was
it Joe Regis?
it might have, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I remember he took over Restless Records eventually.
Yes. Yes, that's who it was.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remembered.
Well, it was really funny when I remember meeting these people from Restless, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm the one that thought of naming the name Restless," and they thought I was crazy, and that's the
Yeah.
truth.
Like,
You know, I
sure
mean,
you're
I
good.
remember
Sure you're
going to
good.
Wes Hine and I mean Bill Hine and saying, "What about Restless Records?" And he liked the name, and that's why we named it Restless. But they had no clue at all how the
Yeah,
name
I mean,
started or anything. They were like, "Wow, well, we run it now, so fuck off." You know, I'm like, "All right, see ya."
yep, exactly. And they don't exist anymore, right? And no,
No, they're
they,
long gone. In
I know
fact,
a few bands.
a lot of records are getting reissued and coming out in different forms and stuff now, and everyone's trying to get their back catalog from
I
people
was
call
tr
me all the
I was just
time.
gonna say that, it's funny. I looked up the Straw Dogs, whatever, the Straw Dogs record that we put out on Enigma, and it's not in print. Not that I would think that it would be,
The
but
you mean the album, right? We are not amused. Not the
yeah.
is the EP also? Because we put that EP out with Young Fast Iranians.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't. Well, I saw the EP for sale somewhere, but it might have been secondhand. But I didn't see the other one for sale
I
anywhere.
haven't seen that anywhere either. There's other records like that. The Neighbor's High Hard one you can't find anywhere. This guy Vic Steffens owns the
Nick
production.
Stevens.
That's what happened, you know. Back then, I was explaining this to people. You don't understand. There were all these P&D deals where these
Right,
guys would get a band, own the masters, and then shop them. And you think you're signing the band, but you're not really signing the band. You're
right.
signing, Vic
You're
Steffens,
you're
because he
you're
owns,
losing their masters is
yeah,
what you're
and
doing.
it's like it's crazy. So
Yeah.
did you go on to work for other labels after Enigma?
Yeah. Well, what I didn't tell you how I got fired.
Oh yeah, that's right. Joe Regis
It's
fired
Joe
you.
Regis. So anyway, Stryper came to town. Stryper fired me. And
What?
I'm gonna call anti-Semitism on
Is
those.
this before or after they gave you the Bible with your name
Oh,
on?
it was after my Bible. I still have that damn.
Me too, me too.
Um, yeah. So what happened was they played, I want to say the Beacon. Um, and it was a big show. It was a Beacon. It was New York, and they were still at their height. My partner now is like, I can't believe you work with Striper. I love Striper. Can I have your gold record put in the
All of a sudden, everyone likes Striper now. We were back then; it was like a
Yeah, I
joke, and
did
now
not.
everyone tells you
They
they
were
love
nice
them.
guys. They were always
Yeah,
nice. But so what happened was I didn't know any better, being the punk rock girl, and my idea of a gig is you have sound check, you walk in, if you put people on the list, and this is the end of it, right? Well, apparently, what I didn't know then was that if you invite a photographer who goes into the pit, right, for the first whatever, it's 5 songs or whatever that it's in their
yeah,
contract,
yeah.
they also need a ticket because they have to sit down if they want, unless they're leaving, which some of them do. They come, they shoot the show, they split. But apparently, this person, I don't even know who it was a big fan. of the band knew the band really well and couldn't stay. They kicked him out after he shot. And
Ooh.
I I'm sure that Stryper said, "Who the fuck is this chick? Get rid of her." So
Oh.
anyway, and then they accused me of like selling cutouts. I'm like, why would I sell cutouts? Give me a break. But actually, it worked out great because I went to like Israel for like 3 months, and then I went to Spain. I traveled all around. It was great. So I wouldn't have had the chance to do that. So everything happens for a reason, you know. And then I worked at Shawnee. No, then I worked at Polygram slash Island. Um, and I worked typically, I was a publicist at Enigma, right? When I got hired, I was told that I was going to be doing radio promotion, but when I got there, guess what? I was a publicist. I was like, oh yeah, I could do that, sure.
At
Yeah.
Polygram at Island?
And no, at Enigma.
Okay, yeah, you were
Yeah.
the, well, I remember you as the publicist.
Yeah, I was, but I was originally told when I was hired that I was going to be a radio promotions person. So, whatever.
Wow, did I tell
Yeah.
you that?
What?
Did I tell you that? I don't
No,
remember that.
Scott. Scott told me
Scott
that.
did? Yeah.
So anyway, that doesn't matter. I would have been horrible at radio promotion.
Yeah, Eileen ended up coming in and doing
Eileen did
radio.
that.
Yeah.
God, R.I.P. Eileen.
Yeah, I know, huh?
Yeah,
Wow, forgot
that
about
was
that.
horrible.
I got to ask you
So
about Island.
yeah.
When you worked at Island, were you in distribution or were you at the label? Because you were in a Kew Gardens, were you?
No, I worked at actually at Polygram at Worldwide
Yeah,
Plaza.
because I when I
Yeah.
was with A&M Records years later, about a year and a half, they put me out in Kew Gardens. I was out there with the PGD people. That's why I was asking. But I
Oh,
was
yeah,
also at the office that in the building you were at, Times
yeah.
Square.
Yeah, I was at in the Times Square building. It was brand new at the time. Actually, the day I started was like the week they opened the building, you
Yeah,
know.
because
And
Debbie ended up coming to work. We worked together at Giant, and then she came to an A&M, and we worked together at A&M. Were you there when Debbie was at A&M?
no,
Yeah,
I think
so
I
it
was
was this
already
is
gone by
before
then.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I worked there for a couple of years in the production department, which was interesting. It was a little boring, but I was going to school at the time to get a master's degree, so it was fine. It was basically um Island and a bunch of the Polygram, releases were all being remastered and
Issued.
re-released
Yeah.
on CD and on and even on cassette. There were some things that weren't even on cassette, and we were still releasing shit on cassette back then. So yeah, so there were a bunch of things that I worked on and new releases. There was some Anthrax stuff. Um and I don't know.
I didn't know I didn't remember. I probably knew that you worked at a major, but I'm sure we must have crossed paths. We had to
Probably. I
because I
was,
would be down there all the time. I worked
yeah,
at Enigma till like 97, so I was there
right.
like,
Oh yeah, you were there a long
yeah,
time.
93, 4, 5, 6, all those years I was in either LA or New York. But,
Right.
you
Well,
know,
by 97, I was at Shawnee.
that's a reggae label, right?
It's the weirdest label ever. It's reggae, folk, smooth jazzy stuff like Richard Elliott, who we also put out on,
Richard Elliott. Yeah, Sue
remember Richard
Barbado. There's a name from the past. She loved
Yeah,
Richard Elliott.
you
Sue Bar
love Richard Elliott. He must sell records because he's still out there doing stuff.
Did you work
Um,
with, you must have worked with Sue Barbado for a
of
while, right?
course,
Yeah,
yeah. Didn't we have a jazz label
we
under the
did.
Enigma umbrella?
We
What was it
those
called?
guys were willing to try anything, man. That's the thing about the Hines that I look back and admire now. They weren't afraid to try anything.
Yeah, throw
We
it on
did
the wall, see what
yeah, we did
sticks.
all kinds of music.
Crazy
They let
stuff.
me sign Ronnie Montrose. I mean, it was like great, man. Ronnie Montrose is on Enigma. I'll never forget Bill Hine
I
let me.
could see Bill being like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah, he was
great."
really excited. And that was a P&D deal too, so it did
Yeah.
really well for them.
Shawnee was interesting. First of all, one of the owners, whose name is absolutely going past my head right now. But he oh his name I know his name. Dan Collins. Dan Collins. And he kind of looked like, I don't know. He had a really long white beard, really scraggly white hair. He looked like kind of a hippie mountain man. I don't know. But he lived in the label's offices on Late Street, which is right off of Canal Street. Like it's like right in between Chinatown and Tribeca, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like one of those streets where if you actually asked the cab driver, can you take me to Late Street? Like not one New York City cab driver knew where it was. But anyway, Dan lived there, which was weird because, Dan would come out, shuffle into the office in the morning with a cup of coffee and a bathrobe. Um, then, then for a while, the label manager broke up with his wife, so he was living there too.
Wow, that sounds like a sitcom over there. Jeez.
And but Dan was very interesting guy. I don't know if he's still alive, but very interesting guy. He started the label with a guy named Richard Nevins, who they both loved, like bluegrass and like Delta blues, like Mississippi blues. So what Dan did was he built the label's catalog by getting in his old truck and driving down to Mississippi, Alabama, and literally just knocking on people's doors and asking if they had any old records, old tapes, or old whatever.
Wow,
And he built like a lot of their catalog that's still out today from doing that.
that's incredible.
Yeah, like
That's
bar-
old school.
barns and all that shit.
Yeah.
And he put out stuff like Charlie Patton, Blind Little this, Little whatever. And they did a lot of Celtic music.
Wow.
We did soundtracks for
What did
PBS,
you do there?
marketing,
Wow. So
which
you talk to retailers a lot.
retailers, I worked a lot with the art department. I did a lot of the ad buying,
Was it major distribution or independent?
independent, independent. We had our own sales force that I worked with,
Wow.
that actually that we hired that actually placed. It worked. You know
I
what?
kind of weren't they involved with Rounder
They might have been
eventually?
on a couple of releases.
Huh.
They were kind of all over the place during that period. They were really trying to expand, and they did. They put out a couple of really high selling records. They put out the soundtrack to Ireland or the Irish, which was like a burn, like a one of those Rick Burns documentaries on PBS, and that sold really well. Um, and had a lot of reggae stuff that
Oh yeah.
Yellow
That's what I
Man,
know them from. Yeah,
yeah,
Yellow
Yellow
Man.
Man, Buddha Baruka, who talk about crazy. And I mean like Muda Baruka would not wear shoes. Would not wear shoes. And once we couldn't find him. He was late for a show. We had just paid him, and these guys, I don't know if you know this about reggae bands, but you can only pay them in cash. Can only pay them in cash. So literally it's a paper bag full of cash.
Wow.
Yeah, they won't do it any other way. So, we had just paid him and then he wasn't showing up at the gig. We're like, oh boy, now what? He just walked away with $10,000 in cash in a paper bag. Now we can't find him. Then we're driving around Times Square. The gig was at some place in Midtown, and all of a sudden there's snow on the ground, slush on the ground. There's Muta, barefoot,
Barefoot?
barefoot, walking around Times Square, holding his bag of money, and like smoking a blunt, like whatever with his posse. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. And they wouldn't, is interesting. I mean, I don't know if the reggae scene has changed since then, but like they wouldn't talk to me.
Wow.
because I was a girl, and like they wouldn't look at you and they wouldn't talk to you. It was just a little bit creepy,
Was
but
that it for you after that job? You just said, forget it, I'm done.
that was pretty much it. Then I moved to Tennessee. I moved to Music City,
You did?
and
Did
yeah,
you
I
work
did.
there in the music business too?
I moved there twice.
Wow.
I actually moved there once, and then I worked at a university teaching music business studies, Middle Tennessee State. Then I came back, got the Shawnee job. Then I met my ex-husband, and he's from Mississippi. And so he wanted to get back down south because he worked for Cashbox and a couple of other, he's a writer for a couple like Tennessee-based, publications. And so I moved back down to Tennessee, which I really didn't want to do, but I did. And then I worked at an organization called Nashville Cares, which
Oh
is
yeah, I heard of them. Yeah.
AIDS organization. So I planned, that's when I kind of moved more into my event planning thing, which I really enjoyed. And I planned their AIDS walk for, the state for several years. And
I thought you went to college and became a teacher and were a teacher the
I
whole.
did, while I was at Polygram, I did get my master's degree. I didn't use it until
Where'd you get the master's from?
NYU.
Oh wow, nice. Emerson and
Um,
NYU. Those are some good schools,
I
Julie.
think I'm still paying off the NYU one. Um, and I put it on a credit card, could you believe? Anyway, so yeah, so I went to Emerson, I went to NYU, got my degree, didn't really do anything with it, and then I got divorced, but I was pregnant when I got divorced. So I moved back to New York from Nashville, and I went and did my student teaching, and went back to teaching because I was a mommy. So, and there was no way I was going to rely on, event planning on the music business, to try and feed a kid on my own. And
Yeah,
it was
things really got weird after like 2000. It was like, what the fuck? Like you were a manager then label. I became a manager after, and that was really hard
really hard.
managing
Yeah.
bands for like the next 18 years. But you know what? I would love to talk to you all day, but we've been talking for a
Oh my
while.
God. Yeah, it's
Um,
10 o'clock. I'm hungry.
well, I'm trying to think of how the hell to wrap this up with you, Julie. Okay, I got one for you. Is it Julie Chrysler or Julie Kreichman that I'm promoting this podcast? Because I
Well, I
know
would
you
say
changed. And why did you change your name?
I changed my name because, first of all, no one pronounces it right. You just pronounced it wrong, so there you go.
What
It's
is it?
it's Kreischman,
What did I
but
say? I said
Kreich
Kreichman.
Kreischman. Well, it's okay. Some of my family says Kreischman, some says Kreischman. My father never went by Kreischman. He always went by K, because
You're
Kreischman's
funny.
it's hard to spell, and it's like when someone says Julie, when they pause at the K, yeah, that's me, Um, it's always spelled wrong, it's always pronounced wrong, and I wanted a radio name. So my radio name, the name of my show was called The Overdrive because it was an overnight.
Oh,
And so Julie Chrysler on The Overdrive.
yes.
So yeah. And then I worked at BOS with that name too, with Maxine, who lived in
So
that
is your
apartment also, by the way.
so you never really legally changed your name?
No, everyone knew me by Julie Chrysler
Yeah.
until I started teaching again. And then everyone knows me as Julie Kreischman. But I know when someone asked for back in the day, when someone asked for Kreischman, I knew they were a bill collector and I would avoid it.
I know I don't know why, but I always knew that that was your real name. I don't know why, but I did know that.
Yeah, and I just liked Chrysler. And the really funny thing, and here's a nice way to end it, is my son, who's an actor. He's living in Liverpool. He's got an agent. He's
That's
doing his thing.
awesome.
Yeah, he's 23 years old, and his registered name and on his headshots and stuff is Alex Chrysler.
Really? That's awesome.
So he took my name. So I think that's kind of cool, my fake name. So anyway, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was like a long, nice funny conversation.
I
Thank you
know.
so
When are
much.
you in New York? Let's get together.
I'm trying to think of when the last time I was
Where
there
do
was.
you
I was
live
going
now?
there a lot for a while, but I haven't been there. And I was there a couple of years ago. I was there during the pandemic, actually. I had to
You
help
were?
somebody out.
Right.
I had to deliver some masks, actually,
Oh, yeah,
to New
yeah.
York. This big company, my friend owned it. He said, "Can you do me a favor? We'll give you a lot of money. Can you deliver like these masks to this event?" It was in Long Island, actually. And I drove because I remember driving Long Island, seeing Manhattan, and like, I wish I was over there,
The
But
city was scary anyway. It was
yeah,
very depressing. You wouldn't have want to been there. I spent 2 years out in the Hamptons at my parents' beach house. I took the kid and just said, I don't need to be in the city. Let's go walk on the beach every day.
that's a good place to be during a
Yeah, yeah,
pandemic.
totally.
Not that
Well,
anywhere was really.
yeah, exactly. Well, it was good to see you. If you do come to the city, let me know. You're living in Massachusetts, right?
Yes, I live in the Worcester area now.
Just, all
Yeah.
right.
But
Yeah, let me
yeah, I would love to hang out with you. Debbie's still down there too, right?
As a matter of fact, Debbie just texted me while we were talking. Isn't
Yeah, I
that
got to
funny?
talk to her. I want to get her on my
Yeah, you
podcast too
should.
because
You should.
well, I've got a long, long, long list.
Oh no, she just sent me a text. Clem Burke died.
What?
Clem Burke died.
Clem Burke? I didn't even know he was sick.
You know who else died too? The guy, what the hell's his
That
name?
sucks because I've met Clem many times. This band I managed, the Charms, did a bunch of shows with the Romantics when he was their drummer.
Yeah,
Wow,
I
that
forgot the
is,
name.
I got a
The
call.
guy from 999 died too. The guitar player.
Oh my God.
They're dropping like flies, Steve.
Ugh.
Taking vitamins. Taking vitamins.
Okay, I'm laughing. People are dying and I'm laughing.
Like,
But
listen, what
what
else
else
can you
can we
do?
do, right?
Nothing else to do.
Julie, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Do you need anything from me? Do you need like pictures of me with the Dogmatics or any shit like
Hold on,
this?
hold on, hold on.